You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host, Sean Sebastian. And there he is,
Mickey Peterson.
Mickey Peterson over there. He just looks so happy. So glad to be back, everybody.
Sometimes I like it.
It's a beautiful, beautiful week. It's always a beautiful week when you get to tune in to us live here on the Red Moon Podcast.
The Red Moon casting pod. The
every
pods
single
of cast.
Every single Tuesday.
I have
9
cast
p.m.
my pods.
You've casted your pods. Your Tide
That is
pods.
some strong coffee, Brandon.
Sorry.
That's good.
I think
It's just
it's
you know it's
good.
strong when it's that bitter. It's bitter.
Ooh, there it is. It's kind of like an IPA beer.
Brandon likes to make them bitter.
It's bitter.
Bitter.
Black and bitter.
Black and bitter. It's good. It's good.
Oh, yeah.
We got a great show. We were already somewhat talking about. I got to join this week, which is different over next door.
Yeah.
The pre-podcast festivities.
I always look forward to these kind of weeks.
I do too.
I know your schedule sucks.
I was gonna say
like it.
it's gonna suck tomorrow when I've only got 3 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
But I'll power through. I'll get through it. I'll get home. I'll crash and then wake up, do it all over again.
Yep.
But I get to enjoy a cigar with you all, some dinner, some good conversation, which we talked a little bit about our relationships topic.
Mm-hmm.
I told my neighbors, I said, "Hey, you got to tune in to find out
You gotta
what my
watch.
opinions are."
You gotta watch the show.
I do have a definitive opinion on:
Brandon has opinions sometimes.
is there a perfect someone for
Oh,
everyone?
we're just dropping it at the top
geez.
stop of the
Teasing
show.
it. I'm
Wow.
teasing it. You
That
got to
was
tune in
more than
though.
a tease.
He acts like this is our most epic relationship segment.
You got me almost there.
Oh.
Like that was more than a tease.
I gave you some strong coffee just because I wanted to throw you back in your chairs and get you ready for this packed show. Talking D23. The expo was last week. Uncovered a lot of stuff from Disney for the next year, their 100th year.
Yeah.
Looking forward to their 100th birthday over the course of the next year. And we've got some news. Brendan Fraser's back in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Fraser.
He's back in the
Yeah.
biz, guys.
I hope so.
I was going to say.
I saw a pretty cool picture of them.
He was supposed to be in Batgirl, but it got canceled. So
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Michael Keaton had stuff to say about that.
yeah.
He played it close to the chest.
He
though.
was
It
nice.
good.
He
Oh,
just
he
said,
did? Okay.
he said he
Okay.
didn't know anything about it, and he assumed it was for a good business reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty generic.
You know what? If
But it was nice,
more,
though.
I was gonna say, if
Yeah.
more actors,
Would
and
just that-
Hollywood in general came out with that kind of perspective of look, that's not my wheelhouse. I don't deal in
Yeah.
I
that.
know. I actually really liked the answer. I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's a very
Look how old he is,
professional.
though.
That's
I mean,
a
what's that
professional
say?
answer, though.
Yeah, but that comes from a more professional
Yeah.
Yep.
age of actor too.
And from somebody who I think
doesn't want to get pulled into all
Right.
the, you
Yeah,
know,
right.
He's like, I don't care about all
Yeah.
this crap. I don't get pulled into naming names and
it's not worth it.
yeah.
It's not. It's just not worth the rigmarole Magoonie.
Yeah,
Just
that
saying.
rigmarole Magoonie.
That's it.
I didn't watch the Emmys, but I heard that he got something for Dope Sick.
Which I've heard
was a great show.
would be
Yeah.
worthwhile.
It was.
Nobody
yeah.
watched the Emmys.
Yeah.
I only saw one clip on Twitter that was, and it was kind of funny. It was the ribbing with the Murders in the Building, Selena Gomez,
Oh,
Martin
yeah.
Short, and
Yeah.
Steve Martin.
It's a good show too.
And it was fun. The Martin Lawrence. Gosh, I don't know why I said that. Martin Short
Yeah.
joked on Steve Martin. He was like, "So how does it feel when everybody says nice to meet you, Angela Lansbury?" And I was like, "Dang, man!" It was both of them were throwing shade on each other.
No,
It was
them
good.
two are pretty funny. Yeah,
They've
everything
been friends for a
I didn't
long
watch
time.
it, but
Yes.
every review of the show I've seen online said that it was pretty bad.
It doesn't surprise me.
The show?
They said the only thing that saved the Emmys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
the
was gonna
reviews.
say, only Murders in the Building,
the
yeah.
reviews of the Emmys. They said
Yeah.
the only thing that saved it, and this is how I knew like it was even worse garbage. I had to roll my eyes at. They said the only thing about the Emmys that was good this year that saved it were the speeches. I was like, oh, of course,
wow.
of
Gosh.
course. They said there were a lot of amazing speeches, but the hosting and the skits and everything were terrible. And I'm like, no, the whole show was probably terrible, including the speeches.
Yeah.
There's nothing greater in my mind than when I see that there's an award show that doesn't deal with movies, so then we don't have to talk about it.
I know.
Yeah, but here we are.
Yeah.
But this is our icebreaker. I mean, we're not going to dive any deeper
exactly.
than this.
Other than you shouldn't have watched the Emmys, you probably didn't.
Yeah.
Nobody did. I'm sure the ratings will come out tomorrow and be like, yeah, nobody did.
No.
The only other thing I saw from it was Keenan and Kel they reunited.
They had a Good
That was
Burger
nice.
reunion.
Yeah, that was
and
cool.
some people are on the fence about Jimmy Kimmel because he played dead during an acceptance speech. So some people were like, yeah, it was inappropriate. He shouldn't have done that. And
That's
other
right.
people are like, it was funny.
White male privilege,
So,
I'm
you know,
saying.
yeah.
Most of what he does is unfunny.
Well, it was actually
True. It's so true.
that was, I think, for the Abbott Elementary win.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
So,
apparently he worked with her before.
I don't know.
Like he was one of the first ones.
She
that
said
gave her
she
a
wasn't
job.
offended,
Yeah.
but everybody else is offended for her.
Well,
so.
well, here's the thing. Once everybody else is offended for you, got to jump on the bandwagon too,
Yeah.
and now join in with the crowd.
So we'll
Yeah.
see.
Otherwise, they come after
We'll see
you.
what happens. Well, she's supposed to be on his show this week, so if she said if she's
Will
offended
she
later,
confront him?
Well, she
Yeah.
said if she does decide to be offended, she'll punch him on the show. So we'll see.
Well, we'll see. But
Yes,
also,
I mean, she was joking, obviously, but
we have a good review.
yeah.
The review is good. Just want to preface it. The review is always good.
Well, it's a good review for a movie that was based on a good movie.
Okay, let's
just saying.
let's dive into. Here is our review of the live action version of Pinocchio.
Here we are again, another live-action adaptation of a beloved animated Disney classic. This time around, Disney tackles Pinocchio, handing the reins to Robert Zemeckis, who brings in longtime collaborator Tom Hanks as Geppetto, with a CGI version of Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket, voiced by Benjamin Ainsworth and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, respectively. The ingredients to this live-action adaptation all seem to be there, and the film follows the original story beats with some differences sprinkled in here and there to pad out the film. I say pad out rather than flesh out because even with the extra running time, nothing of substance has been added. Which brings me around to the gripe I've had with the majority of live-action Disney films. Just like a wooden puppet may be an imitation of a real boy, but only just almost real, the live-action adaptation looks and feels like Pinocchio, but it is a hollow imitation that, unlike the title character in the story, never proves itself. The film is not Disney's worst live-action remake, and in fact, I would commend it for being one of the better attempts. The movie does hook you right away with an opening reminiscent of the original, but with Zemeckis' own spin. Tom Hanks as Geppetto is one of the better performances in the movie, with his best parts in the role coming at the film's start, as the movie subtly showcases Geppetto dealing with the loss of his wife and only son, giving a bit more emotional depth to his works and the creation of Pinocchio. Sadly, however, this plotline is never revisited, and what could have been a strong emotional through line for the film is abandoned. The Blue Fairy, played by Cynthia Erivo, which has been the center of some controversy online, also does a fantastic job and nails the refrain of "When you wish upon a star" she belts out in her scene. But then she too, along with the iconic song, are never seen again through the film. From here, the movie begins to fall apart. The rest of the movie is a predictable mess that feels rushed and loses the meaning of the themes and messages of the original along the way. With a longer runtime, I expect to see more depth added to such Disney classics, more emotional depth that can deliver timeless themes to new generations. Disney's remakes, including Pinocchio, settles for cheap imitation, something that quotes the messages but not give them any real weight, with Pinocchio stumbling coincidentally into each set piece rather than through organic narrative means. The reason for this is to shoehorn in spectacle rather than substance. The film is full of spectacle that eats up the running time and culminates with Pleasure Island and the Mighty Monstro. And while some elements of the film are gorgeous to look at, too often there are scenes with spotty CGI which lessens the spectacle entirely. And in turn, the overuse of CGI spectacle overshadows the themes that should be most important. Important messages about what makes a real boy. The film keeps coming back to the ideals of being brave, truthful, and unselfish, but only truly tackles the subject superficially, with most scenes being too on the nose and missing the truth behind these messages, culminating in an ending slightly different from the original that is sure to divide viewers. Ultimately, the live-action Pinocchio has no life of its own. It falls back on the original too much without adding anything of its own to justify its existence, and gets wrong a few too many times what makes the original a classic. It's good enough that the kids will probably enjoy it, and casual fans of the original will appreciate the attempt, but it misses the mark where it matters most. The live-action Pinocchio truly has no strings to hold it up. I give Pinocchio 2 out of 4 stars.
There you have it. 2 out of 4 stars for Pinocchio.
I think
live
kids
action.
will still like it for the
Yeah.
most part. If it doesn't, I honestly think some kids will probably get a little bored by it. Like, I don't think it's going to hold. It's not going to be one I think kids are going to revisit over and over. They'll watch it once and be like, oh, okay, and I think move on. There's nothing bad in it. Like, it's appropriate for kids. But it wasn't as well done as I think the original. It doesn't hold up the themes and the moral values as well, I think, as the original. And it just felt like kind of a lazy, like what Disney has done with all their live action remakes, a lazy cash grab for the most part, where we'll just take something and we'll change it a little bit here and there, but basically have the same exact plot structure beat for beat, and not do anything worthwhile or add any substance to it. So
No heart.
Yeah,
There's
That's
no
the same.
heart in this movie.
There isn't.
I mean, I'm not trying to make
No,
a joke
no,
about
but
him
there
being
is.
a doll,
Perfect.
but I'm saying the movie has no heart.
There is no heart. They don't
No.
add any substance, and then there's less substance in the original. So it's like, why am I watching this? I could watch the original, which is shorter. I mentioned that in my review. These live action movies are a half hour to an hour longer than all the animated versions, and they feel rushed. Like the whole movie felt so fast paced, even though it had more time, because he was just haphazardly stumbling into each situation. I hated that there was no through line. I told Brandon in the original, Honest John, the fox, like convinces him to join the theater or whatever.
Yep.
That doesn't work out. And then you see the scene of Honest John and the cat talking to the coachman when the coachman's paying him this. I'll pay you even more money than what's his name did if you find me bad little boys. And they're like, okay, we can do that. So they run into Pinocchio again and convince him to go to Pleasure Island. So it connects the whole plot together. In this, he just randomly falls into every situation, and I'm just like, I don't know. I just didn't like that either.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, what about you? As far as, do you agree 2 out of 4? You actually went lower?
Yeah,
or?
I was around 1.5.
Okay.
I watched it with my sons the other night, and I started watching it a couple nights ago, and I got about 20 minutes into it and was like,
I actually watched it
I was
in
like,
3 parts.
I think I'm gonna watch. I think I'm gonna
I
watch it
watched
with
something.
the kids, and just that way the enjoyment from them will maybe make me happy, because it wasn't making me happy.
Yeah.
But we watched it. The kids liked it. They didn't love it. It wasn't.
Did it keep their attention?
A little bit. My kids are at the age where they just don't sit still, so it took me out of it, because I'm constantly like, are you gonna watch this? Are you gonna sit down and watch this? If you're not, then go away, go play, or something. Like you're taking my focus off of it.
Dad's got to review this.
Yeah, I really didn't. I didn't enjoy any of it other than just sitting on the couch and eating popcorn with the kids. This movie, the original movie, was a movie that I had mixed emotions about when I was a kid, because it was joyful and it was fun and it did teach, but there were also moments that just scared the living hell out of me. And Pleasure Island and Monstro scared me to death when I was a kid.
Turns into the donkey in the original. That used to scare the crap out of me.
It's
and
terrifying.
In this, I just
in this it wasn't as terrifying. Number one, because I knew it was coming. But number two, it was just poorly done.
It was goofy in this.
Yeah,
it wasn't scary. It was
did
goofy.
not get a sense that, oh crap, like something is like really bad is happening here. Like it just didn't do that for me. I will say about that scene though, or about that portion of the film, it's one of the things that I had completely forgotten about the original movie. But after I saw the remake, I was just kind of like, well, they never address what happens to all those poor kids that get turned into donkeys and get sold into slavery or whatever. I'm just like, wow, like
they just
it's
completely
just crazy
overlooked
that an old Disney movie wouldn't have a happy ending for them. There's no redemptive thing.
No,
there's nothing. There's
Disney,
nothing even that. There's no hero that saves the day.
Yep.
It was just dark.
Oh, that's very old school.
Yeah,
Walt Disney didn't believe in coddling children. He thought they could handle certain themes if it was
Bambi,
presented to them well.
Right in the first 10 minutes of the movie, it kills his mom.
It's one of those things where I do love
it's only
that.
been
that
50 years.
Oh, they'll
60.
remake that too.
The morals of the original, I think, had much more emphasis on them. Just like with in the original, Jiminy delivering the line, well, to go ahead and act like a jackass or whatever, and then they turn into the donkeys, and like just the way it's delivered in that, look, when you're bad, when you act like a jackass, this is what happens. Bad things happen to you.
Yeah.
And I felt like that wasn't really emphasized. I mean, obviously it's like, yeah, you've been bad, now you turn into a donkey, but they never really got into like, well, that's
why?
You're acting
there's
like
no why.
They never. I mean, other than Lampwick, I do think he does say the line in the live action, doesn't he? He's like, "Do I look like a jackass or something?"
No,
I think it's the only time he uses
twice.
it.
Jiminy doesn't say it in the new one.
Yeah,
but in this one, Lampwick is the only one that says it.
But a donkey cry fills in for the word ass.
Well,
he's like,
there is one time where it's heard, and I was actually pleasantly surprised they kept it in this one, because funny enough, I thought that would be one of the things they would take out, even though it is in the original, like I forget what year Pinocchio, the animated, came out.
1950 something.
Yeah, but it's surprising to me.
Or maybe earlier than that.
It might have been older than that.
Snow White was.
Yeah, I thought
it's
it
only
was
the
in
second,
the 30s.
Yeah, it was only the second Disney movie ever made, so yeah, it was older than the 50s then.
But I know, like, when it shocked me, but it also seemed much more relevant in the cartoon. Because it was, they're literally turning into donkeys.
Yeah.
And again, some of the whimsical nature, and I mean, it's not whimsical happy, because like you said, it's kind of terrifying in the animated version. But it's like part of it, too, was done because there was kind of an understanding, I felt like,
1940.
1940,
Wow,
okay.
yeah.
Part of it being released that early, and with the animation style it was about showcasing, too, the effects of what you could pull off with animation. Yeah. And so there are, again, not to try to give a leeway to the older version of the film, because I'll be honest, Pinocchio has never been one of my favorite stories.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of the classic Disney, which I give it respect. It's just I grew up with the newer age, you know, the Little Mermaid, Lion King, Beauty and the Beast. Well, and that's the thing. We'll talk about that in D23, all coming up. Yeah. But it's funny because they ruined for me those movies, turning them into live action, because again, they made something that was almost, for 90% of the film, beat for beat, like the animated. So it was like, what's the point of this? I'll just go watch the animated classic.
Yep,
and then even in this one, the subtle story beats they added to it, whether it be a side character, which wasn't too bad. It was fine. There just wasn't any depth there.
Yeah.
But the two that they added that really, I felt like, made the story longer and it was pointless were the two singing scenes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, the singing, and
I hated the Coachman one.
Yes.
it was all of it was awful, because I'm like, none of this music sounds remote. I get you want to try to make it upbeat and new for today's audience,
modern,
but you then have to but you've already thrown in subtleties and nuances from the original. And I'm sorry, but when you actually have the throwback with the Walt Disney theme that came from Pinocchio,
that made me mad. They only sang one refrain,
right?
And she did honestly, like that. The actress that played the Blue Fairy actually did a great job. Like,
no, I didn't have,
when she sang that refrain, I was like, oh wow, she nailed that. That's beautiful. And then
they didn't
it was
do
just
nothing
one.
with it.
She just one refrain and it's gone.
Well, and I told you, like, they didn't even come back to her.
Yeah, they didn't.
She comes back twice.
Yeah,
in the second or in the animated cartoon.
She's throughout the animated a little bit, whereas they didn't. They threw her in there and then we're done with her. She never comes back.
No.
I hated that when his nose grows long in the live action movie. In the animated, she comes back and it kind of, then you have this understanding. Oh, his nose is growing because of the magic. She's explaining it to him. Yeah. In this, his nose just starts growing, and yes, everybody knows that happens to Pinocchio when he lies. But you still, like, I feel like in the movie, you need an explanation. It's like, it's kind of weird to me that
I told you,
they're just taking for granted that audiences know what happens.
It pissed me off that his nose didn't sprout leaves.
Like it
I
does
mean, I didn't care about that.
I was just like, I was waiting for it. Well, they did everything else exactly the way
that's true,
and they did it poorly. Like, there's one scene, dude, when the kid is turning into the donkey, and they cuts to a shadow of him turning into the donkey, and the animated film.
Yep.
It is.
Oh, it's terrifying.
It's terrifying watching this shadow,
and you see
transform.
The horror on Pinocchio's face.
Yes, yeah. And in this one, they did the shadow, which looked horrible. It didn't even look like a real shadow. And then they go into, like, trying to show you all the shoehorned in special effects that don't look that great. Like, I've seen animals done. The Jungle Book looked better than that.
Yeah.
Oh, there were so many.
There was a lot of
spotty
CGI.
I would say the CGI was hit or miss throughout the whole film. I really do think, like, for me, when it started, I just watched the animated film, and for the first, all the way up to when Pinocchio gets the life from the Blue Fairy, and then he's sent off to school, I was like, this isn't too bad.
Yeah, the
from
opening
that,
I thought was
opening
okay.
was good. the attachment of why he would be creating Pinocchio to begin with that the cartoon never goes into. And again, this is all based on folklore that they have from the Pinocchio story. So I'm like, okay, this could have been done a much tighter through line throughout this film they totally dropped and completely never brought up again.
They mentioned Geppetto's family at the beginning, and I really, other than the ending with his clocks, they kind of bring up his wife again, but they never really mention like any of that ever again once Pinocchio comes into play. And I'm like, okay. I was like, so what was the purpose of this? You try to build this emotion with Pinocchio's creation, but then you never bring it back into play. You just get to the end when Geppetto's just, spoiler alert, just like, you were always what I asked for. And I'm like, that wasn't really. No. I mean, and even that, like, that's what bothers me about the whole movie was undermining a lot of the themes and morals from the original at every turn. Right. I didn't like he goes to school. He actually does go to school in this one, and they kick him out. And that would have been okay if maybe you had a scene with Jiminy explaining, sometimes you try to do the right thing and it doesn't work out, but that doesn't mean you stop trying. That doesn't happen. It's just he goes to school, gets kicked out, so then he's convinced by the fox, well, you tried to do that, but obviously it's not for you. You need to do this instead. And I hated that because even though it's not their intent, it almost sends the message that, well, it's not always the right thing. Just do whatever you want.
The other scene that we were just talking about, the nose growing scene, the reason why I didn't personally like that was other than the blue fairy not telling him why his nose was growing. Yeah. Specifically, the scene plays out where the key is across the room for him to get the lock. His nose grows because he tells lies, and he gets the key. So he lies. And he gets the key going,
and there's never a conversation about what he's doing being wrong. I mean, there is a little
but that's
bit,
the thing.
But not.
Well, even after the words, him and Jiminy says a few little lines, basically saying,
"Did you tell a fib?"
Right?
Or
and yet I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, yeah, but his fib just got him out of the cage.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're insinuating that maybe little lies here and there are okay. Yeah. And I'm like, I didn't like the blurring of morality or
I didn't like including
values.
Little girls with the boys on Pleasure Island.
You're sexist.
I know, but they very specifically in the original mentioned, like, the little boys, the type that like to skip schools and this and that. And it's this insinuation that little girls like to bust things up and be mischievous and bad the same way. Like, I'm not saying little girls can't be bad too, but there are different mindsets. And I didn't like, it's like, well, they got to be included in Pleasure Island too. It's like, no, it's all about these little boys being ornery and bad and destroying
Pinocchio,
things. Yeah.
Who they again, this is the problem with our culture today. They'll still use the line and say it's okay for Pinocchio to say, I want to be a real boy. But then they'll include
But what makes you a real boy,
well, exactly,
is what's on the inside, Brandon.
Conscience. And that's where they start to blur the lines.
That's true.
Well, go ahead, Keith. Yeah, you were bringing up that point.
Well, I just that was finally the ending. Again, spoiler alert, where it's kind of ambiguous on whether he actually turns into a real boy or not, because the point isn't whether he becomes a physical real boy or not. The point is he's already a real boy based on what's inside of him. And I mean, I'm not going to say flat out where that's going, but at the same time,
know
you
where
have
we're
to,
going.
You have to question it. It's sorry, you could say no, that's not exactly what they mean. But with Disney and their reputation, I'm like, what are you trying to say? You change the ending because you don't want to offend people, because you say that physical boy is real and nothing else is a real boy.
It's not even about offending anymore. It's straight up about indoctrinating. I mean, we've seen Disney take this path, and we've seen Disney spout off. We've had video released from internal meetings at Disney where we've had actual managers on staff who are trying to inject any kind of gender ideology into Disney wherever they can. So it doesn't surprise me one bit that they would even toe that line or make those changes to appease that crowd, only so they can subtly inject that indoctrination in.
Yeah, I didn't even see it as much as the gender thing, as much as I saw it as it's just a blurring of reality. It's like, if it doesn't, the gender thing aside, it's like if you wanted to be a real human being, you don't really have to be a human being. You can just be, as long as it's your, your truth, and as long as you have a good moral compass and all this stuff. And it's like,
the reality is whatever you make it.
Exactly. It's like you're saying a wooden puppet is a real child. I mean,
it's a fictional story, but it's kind of a slap in the face of Pinocchio, who worked hard to become a real boy. And it's like, you silly dumb puppet, you're already a real boy.
Right.
It's like, no, I'm not. Make me a real boy, damn it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you selfless and brave and truthful.
And I think that's that. But part of that also is like all of those things in the remake, all of those qualities that make him a real boy, he already has, or he slowly gains a little bit of, but most of it he already has. And I think in the original movie, him becoming a real boy is a reward for being all of those things.
I
and
said
there's no reward in this movie.
I said it during the review, but the scene specifically talking about Pleasure Island, I hated that, there were obviously there's the part where the clocks where they're being too on the nose, not but the other thing that got me was I'm sitting here and I'm seeing, as it continued to show Pinocchio's face throughout it, he's like shocked and dismayed as to what's going on, and like he's kind of questioning, do I want to be a part of this? And I'm like, no. In the original, he dives in because he's seeing the imitation of other boys.
Yep.
And he's thinking, okay, this is what I have to do to become one.
This is what boys do.
This is what boys do. And he joins in right along until they start turning into jackasses. And the point of that, I thought, was, okay, he doesn't know any better. He has to learn these lessons. And again, that's where Jiminy Cricket, his conscience, comes in. But no, Jiminy Cricket doesn't seem like a wise conscience in this, nor does Pinocchio. He seems to be almost accidentally falling into these situations, not choosing to. And I'm like, but that doesn't give the onus isn't on him now to learn these lessons and to choose the right path. And I'm like, the whole idea of watching the original cartoon and why Disney had even made the message to begin with was for it to be not only entertaining, but to walk away with good values to pass along to little boys.
Yeah.
And I thought when you rob the film of that message, that central theme, you're not doing any justice to having redone or remade this film.
They didn't let their conscience be their guide.
Yeah.
Or they did. They don't have, like, their conscience is so warped
sucks.
now.
Yeah, I mean,
it's so
Jiminy
warped now
Cricket sucked. That's the thing is, not only is he supposed to be the conscience, but, I mean, when you take some of those things out into the real world, Jiminy Cricket is a representation of a good friend. A good friend that will guide you in the right direction and hold you accountable and point you in the, guide you or whatever. And he doesn't do that in this movie.
He lightly
He's stumbling
is like, are you sure you want to do this,
Yeah,
Pinocchio?
exactly. Yeah, he leaves it up to him and doesn't really guide at all.
No.
And that was an issue that I had because that's not the Jiminy Cricket from the original. The original, he's devastated when he fails at guiding Pinocchio.
I hate to say it, but after talking about it, I think I was at 2. I'm knocking it down to 1.
Oh, 1.
And the reason it really kind of goes back to the epitome of after discussing it and the live action genres that they've chosen, which we're going to get into here.
The morals
in a bit
weren't
with the
there.
Headlines.
I gave it the 2 just because I thought as an attempt at whatever, it was fine. They will entertain kids. Probably not. Like I said, I don't think it'll hold their attention indefinitely, but I just thought it's not the worst of their live-action remakes by any means. Dumbo was the worst. Lady and the Tramp was terrible, too, but I think Dumbo is the worst. I can't think of one worse than that.
The other disappointing thing, a star rating aside, was just it's really disappointing to see greats like Zemeckis and Tom Hanks feel like they're just phoning it in now.
Yeah.
I mean, it really just seemed like they had no heart or passion.
Alan Silvestri's score, I thought, was lackluster.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it had hints of the original, but I was just like, this is nothing about that I thought was that impressive.
I hate to say it, but there was, at one point, right, like I said, after the beginning of the film, I no doubt was like, okay, I can see why this was a Disney Plus release.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it intentionally was set out to be that, or if it was just screened after it was made, and they thought, we this isn't going to cut it. We can't send this to theaters.
The acting wasn't that great. I mean, all of it. I just thought all of it was just very lackluster.
I'll tell you another thing that pissed me off was Monstro.
Yeah.
I don't know why they changed it from a whale. I was just like, what's the point of that?
It's a sea monster
with all these tentacles, and I was just like,
part of the thing about it that scared me so much when I was a kid was he was a sperm whale.
Yeah, right.
It was a real thing that's out there in the world. It's like, God
look,
dang,
I may
that thing's
be
really out
looking
there in the ocean.
Too much into this, I don't know. I have to believe that Disney somewhat incorporated that originally, whether it's in the folklore or not. I don't know if it's in the original, but it probably is. But I also just think, the biblical story of Noah and the well.
Oh, I'm sure that there's some, the whale is in the original
Jonah,
story. But
Jonah and the well, not Noah. Sorry.
Yeah, the whale is part of the original Pinocchio story. But yeah, I agree. I'm sure some of that was inspired from the Bible. I don't think they just pulled that out of nowhere.
Well, I think, too, that it would have, especially the culture back then, it would have been easier to tell a story like that and be like, see, you've heard this in Sunday school, little boys and girls. Now you're seeing it in Pinocchio. Like, what if, again, to kind of further instill these values of, again, I don't think it's necessarily wrong when you look at some of these Disney greats and you wonder why they're classics and why they became the powerhouse they are. And I think what's so disappointing, not just with these current live action movies, but anything Disney produces is, like we've talked about, there's no heart in it, or the directions are so amiss in so many different directions. They want to be so lukewarm, again, a mile wide and an inch deep in terms of what they actually propel and what they're trying to send forward to new generations. And it's just not going to gravitate the same. Yeah. You're going to have all these movies coming out, and they're going to appeal to a certain crowd and a fan base, but it's really only going to be for just a certain time.
Yeah. This is my last gripe, but my favorite scene was not in this movie because they cut all imaging of this out, but the scene where the cat's smoking the cigar, makes the donut and dunks it.
Yeah.
Oh,
obviously you can't have beer and cigars.
No tobacco use.
Yeah.
Nope.
Even though the whole point of the beer and cigar scenes is to show that this is bad. Yeah. But they changed the beer to root beer and there's no cigars at all.
Of course not.
But I love the scene where he smokes like the smoke ring and the cat grabs it and dunks it in the
coffee or something.
And I was just like, it's such a silly animated scene. It is. I like that.
But to piggyback off that, my last point as well, it again shows you the craft of what Disney was trying to create with not only telling a story with good values, but what the point of Disney was as an animation studio. And they were trying to make their mark of, look how amazing our artists are. And if you watch the cartoon, especially like you even brought up, this being the second movie after Snow White, you watch those two back to back, there's a huge leap in terms of animation. And I'm sorry, the craftsmanship to which this story was told and the details to which you can watch in the original movie, like the scene where the kid's turning into a donkey, the donut scene. I mean, there's so many creative ways in which I'm like, it brings me back to the classic animation styles.
Works. The very opening scene with Jiminy and the songs and everything getting like caught up and all the clocks and the animation is so, just the amount of time it takes to animate all that detail. And in this, like, I rolled my eyes because, they have all the clocks, but it's all CGI, and every clock was a Disney movie reference. Yeah. They had, like, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, Roger. Yeah. They were all Disney properties, and I'm, like, rolling my eyes because it's like, I know it's still craft and takes time to do the CGI, too, but, like, here's the animated version that takes time to design all these intricate clocks, and here you all with your CGI let's just throw in a bunch of goofy Disney references. And I'm like, there was just
that's all it was.
The craftsmanship was completely different. It's like, here's someone who actually was proud of their work, and here's some people just doing it for a paycheck.
It's like anything we see with CGI overload. It's just like there's no heart in it. It's like, okay, anybody could do this. Yep. Anymore, it's nothing we haven't seen already. Alrighty, let's move into our headlines where we're going to talk a little bit more about Disney. My little pup.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
This Disney
all
stuff.
this Disney.
So much Disney unloaded. Just tons of Disney.
D23, and they've announced everything.
They just
everything.
all this stuff out.
There's things I'm still interested in checking out. I just don't really trust Disney enough anymore to be hyped about any of it.
I would agree. I figured we could talk about, I'm trying to think of everything that they actually did release besides all the trailers. They had a ton of announcements.
Yeah, they went over everything for Marvel, Lucasfilm, Disney, and Pixar. I would say the biggest, branches of Disney that everybody's most interested in. And like I said, there's a few things here and there that piqued my interest. But for the most part, I just don't have a lot of trust. So
I'm going through right here the biggest news so far. And this was, I think, I'm trying to look to see, make sure that they actually cover everything. Because I can just start off with kind of a...
I know off the top of my head certain things I am and aren't interested in. I just didn't want to jump around.
Go ahead.
I could say, okay, like with Star Wars, like I wasn't initially, but I am more interested in Andor now. Yeah. Especially knowing that it is designed as specifically just a 2-season miniseries. And the way it's designed, like to jump like the time gap, like sounds really interesting to me. Kind of House of Dragons and the Throne or the Crown-esque, where it'll jump a few years. So I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting, and like somebody who has a plan. We'll see if they do. Yeah. And I'm interested in Ahsoka just because that's still Dave Filoni, and I love that character. But again, I don't have a lot of trust with Disney and their properties anymore to be like, I want these to be great. I don't know if they will. Just like Marvel.
So you're not tired of it?
No. I mean, there's things that I think are more or less. I mean, I'm still in there with Star Wars and Marvel both. I don't trust anything Disney right now. On the Marvel side, Ant-Man 3 sounds great. Like, it sounds like they're actually finally building heavily into like Kang and all the multiverse stuff, but I'm like, okay, but they made it seem that way with Multiverse of Madness, and that fell flat.
Yeah.
So It's like there's things that they're doing that I'm like, okay, these sounds like they'll be interesting stories, interesting movies, but are they going to have the same talent behind them, the same passion behind them? I kind of, at this point, am beginning to feel like even Kevin Feige is kind of getting a bit of an ego where he doesn't think he can do wrong. There's so many times where I hear everything goes through Kevin Feige, and I'm like, okay, if everything's going through Kevin Feige, why is it turning out the way it's turning out now?
So you have,
or does he have his hands behind his back?
You have the Thunderbolts cast is confirmed.
Yeah,
Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan, David Harbour, Wyatt Russell, Julia Lewis.
I actually was
Louis-Dreyfus.
interested in Thunderbolts until they finally announced the cast, and now I'm just like, no, it's.
Well, some of these are already.
They're all already in the MCU. That's why I'm not like I expected them to. That's why I'm not interested, is because of who the Thunderbolts in the comics are and how much more interesting they could be. I knew that they were going to try to pick as many. That's what, first of all, a problem is even having Winter Soldier and Florence Pugh's character in there is like, this is supposed to be a team of villains to anti-heroes. And Winter Soldier at this point really shouldn't be villainous. And even as an anti-hero, like his whole arc in Captain America and the Falcon or whatever, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, his whole arc there is getting over all the deaths he's caused and being remorseful for them. So I'm like, now you're going to throw him into a Suicide Squad type team where he's supposed to be killing other people? I don't like that. Like, I feel like it's a backward step for his character arc. I don't know. We'll see how the movie plays out.
Yeah, because they pretty much redeemed him in Civil War.
Yeah, and now you're putting him in a team where like it's a lot of people who are villainous that are okay. Because the idea of the Thunderbolts in the comics was a team of villains who reformed. They were led by Baron Zemo, who's been like, I really thought that's where they're going with Thunderbolts, because Zemo's been in Civil War and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I'm like, oh, they'll bring him into Thunderbolts and it'll make sense. He leads this team that they pretend to be reformed, and then most of them actually do enjoy doing the right thing and do reform, but Zemo's really not. So like then you have this conflict where the team wants to go right. And I don't know what they're going to do with the story, because it seems more like the Dark Avengers, which I know you don't know that is either, but having all these other random characters.
I don't know. I don't know about the Thunderbolts either.
Well, I was going to say,
I don't know.
Echo will see Vincent Deo.
Kingpin.
As Kingpin.
Yeah.
Matt Shankman from WandaVision is confirmed to direct Fantastic Four.
I don't care.
Let's see. Well, Fantastic Four, all they confirmed was that. Yeah. They didn't say anything else.
But again, he did fine for WandaVision, but I don't know.
We got Mandalorian Season 3 teaser.
I am looking forward to that. I like both seasons of The Mandalorian.
Inside Out 2 has been confirmed. I think that's a huge miss.
I do too.
I think especially,
I'm not excited about that.
I'm honestly surprised.
I know most people would be, but I'm not excited about that.
And it's funny because I actually saw a tweet about this the other day about how they were saying, Disney tried to have a callback to a series with Lightyear, and it failed miserably. So Inside Out 2 is what they need. And I'm like, no. That's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
They don't need to rely. Exactly.
Yeah.
You rely on old IPs because you're out of ideas, or you're trying to shoehorn
most of Pixar's
new crap
sequels,
into old ideas that are popular
Pixar
already.
sequels have not been good. Just Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3.
Those are the main
That's
ones.
the only trilogy like they've
Finding
done.
Dory was not any good.
No.
Monsters
Toy Story
U
4 I didn't even appreciate.
Yeah, didn't like Toy Story 4. Monsters U was bland.
Yep.
The Cars 2 was bad. Cars 3 was better, but still, I think both were unnecessary. So it's one of those things where I'm like, why go back and do something that you can't catch lightning in a bottle a second time?
Why go back and remake the originals?
Right.
I mean, again, it's just them running out of ideas.
It really is disappointing.
They're doing what they think will sell, what'll make money.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that to me is it's one of two things. They're doing what they think will sell, but they're also relying on older properties to prop up any new agendas they have. And that's been my biggest issue is they're not even returning to the heart and soul. At least you somewhat had the same heart and soul, I feel like, up through maybe Toy Story 4. But anything since then, it's been a way to rely on the popularity and the fandom around these properties already. And yeah, you're getting all of the louder voices, but I think it's a louder minority that are speaking to, well, we need to have this representation and this kind of agenda in there. And then they use these properties that everybody knows and they try to sprinkle it in there thinking they can pull one over on everybody.
Yeah.
And the moment there's gripes or complaints and people are like, well, I'm not going to go watch that, or I'm not going to go see it.
I don't feel like Pinocchio
they just complain about it.
Was as
it wasn't
woke. I don't feel like it
wasn't
was
woke.
like drowned out by the woke stuff, but I think Little Mermaid is going to be.
I don't know.
I don't know that it will.
There's a lot of things in that
divisive-
story that I think they're going to twist.
This is the most divisive thing right off the bat. I honestly think. But it was funny. I saw another person comment about that, and they were like, okay, it's fine that you like chose a black girl to play Ariel.
I ain't even worried about that.
Well, but
there's other things in the story that are going to be twisted.
But
go ahead.
They said specifically like, okay, you made her black, that's fine, but why did you give her red hair? It's like, if anything, it's like you're already conforming her. It's like you don't have redheaded
because they recognize her as having red hair.
Right.
It's like, well,
so
they
you chose
her as
one
being white too.
exactly. You chose one aspect to keep and the other one to change deliberately.
I'm not someone who immediately, when I see a diverse casting, as they say, like when you see someone gender, I'm not someone who immediately thinks, oh, that's woke, because sometimes it's not. Like I think, like House of the Dragon, that casting, a lot of people were upset about, but I think he's nailed it and done a great job. I'm okay with it. And we've already talked about Lord of the Rings and blah blah blah. So I think. You hire someone like the Blue Fairy. There was a lot of controversy about the Blue Fairy in Pinocchio, and I actually thought she did an excellent job. I was very pleased with what she did. Mm-hmm. So to me, that wasn't a woke pandering type thing, or maybe they did hire her for those reasons, but the movie itself doesn't feel that way.
Right.
And so that's fine. If The Little Mermaid comes out and there's nothing else woke in it other than just diverse casting, there's not necessarily to me a problem with that. But again, I'm with Sean. I don't trust Disney anymore to do the right thing all the time, so I sit here on bated breath thinking, is it going to be good or not?
Because we know that once you go down that road, you're either going to piss off either group of people. You're going to piss off those who are like the purist and just saying it has nothing to do with race because everybody's screaming racism. No, it's like, no, this is just an already established property. Why are you changing it? You're changing it specifically for diverse purposes, just because you're trying to prove a point. But then if you have a movie where you change the race of the character and then it doesn't go far enough, then you're going to have outcry on the other side who's saying, well, you just didn't push the envelope enough. And then you're gonna piss them off, and I feel like that's the problem with this goes back to the whole Florida bill that Disney came out and thought they were getting trounced on Twitter and all social media about it. So then they finally made a statement. Then after the statement, DeSantis comes out and targets them, and immediately it's like, oh crap! All right, he's speaking for another crowd. Well, back off, and then they shut up. And it hurt the sales of Lightyear with all that going on around the same time. And it's like, Disney is a business at the end of the day, and they're ultimately trying to please any clientele. But part of doing this lukewarm, being in the middle of trying to appease those who are pushing a radical agenda versus those who are just trying to say, why aren't you just focusing on the story and telling good stories? Why are you trying to shoehorn in all of these agendas that nobody else seems to be crying about except for, loud Twitter bots? It's like, why don't you actually just focus on what you're good at and what you obviously haven't done in a long time? And then that's when you get Hocus Pocus 2 in that trailer, which seemed like a complete ripoff of the original. It just seems like they're, again, hitting on all the same notes, at least in the trailer. Even if the story's subtly different, I'm like, you're literally putting in the same type of comedic
There's such a thing as too much fan service, and I think poor sequels they get that wrong. They pretty much just rehash. Look, I mean, the Hangover movies are you watch Hangover 2 and 3, and they're the exact same movie.
Star Wars trilogy. Yeah, I mean, at least the first and third one.
It's like the exact same as the original. It's like that's not what fans want either. I mean, they wanted a new original story, and I agree. Watching the trailer for Hocus Pocus 2, I didn't have any woke gripes about it, but watching it, I was like, I don't know if this is going to be good either, because it looks like they're just going to repeat what they did in the first one. And at that point, what's the point? Like,
I agree.
What is the purpose if you're just going to rehash what you've already done? If you don't have a great new story that you feel is worth telling, like Top Gun. Top Gun was great. It came out so many years after the original, which more years after the original than Hocus Pocus 2 is, but they didn't do it until they came up with an idea that thought, you know what, this would be an amazing sequel to that. Tom Cruise agreed, everybody agreed, got on board, made an awesome movie. with Hocus Pocus 2, I don't believe somebody sat down and came up with this idea for a story and thought, oh, that'd be amazing, let's make this. I believe Disney said, you know what's really popular and what continues to be popular amongst 90s people as they're getting older now? Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
Let's make money off
everybody,
that.
Yeah. What are people watching every Halloween?
Yes.
Hocus
Rumblings
Pocus.
started coming up about it. Wouldn't it be cool to get them back together?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be? And then they were like, "We're doing it."
Yes.
And
It
it was
wasn't we had a
huge
great
news.
idea. It was, this will make money. Let's make a Hocus Pocus 2.
course.
And the story came after. And I'm not saying you can't make a good movie that way either, but I feel like more often than not, when the mindset isn't the story, but just the property's going to make money, I mean, that's the failings that they've had with the Muppets so far. They have no idea what to do with those characters because they don't understand them.
Along the same lines as what we were just talking about, what do you think about the Santa Claus?
I didn't like the trailer.
I didn't like it. I thought
didn't either.
I thought there was I thought the parts with Peyton Manning and I thought that exchange was funny.
And here's the thing.
I thought he looked very weird. I didn't like the look.
The beard
it
and
was
stuff,
bad. I thought
the showrunner's the same guy that did Last Man Standing, so that gave me hope.
Yeah,
and when I
it's a
saw
great
the
show.
Peyton Manning scene, I was like, okay, this is exactly from that guy. I could see that scene being from that creator. But there's other instances.
funny
where,
enough too, the part that intrigued me most is I'm like, because I know Tim Allen and what he stuck up for on Last Man Standing, I'm kind of like, I have more faith that he tied his name to it.
Yeah.
Because I don't see him selling out.
No.
He's
No.
already, I mean, with Home Improvement and Toy Story.
Oh, I'm going to give it a chance for sure. I just wasn't
need,
sold by the trailer.
Same. But also the other question I have about it is, I saw the trailer and at first I was like, oh, this could be kind of funny for something on Disney Plus. I thought it was a movie.
No, it's a 6-episode series.
Okay, when I found out it was a series, I'm like, I don't know what the hell, why they're doing this.
But
that's
they
one of
announced,
those-
they
that's one of
announced
those
that
movies-
like from a year ago
Yeah.
when they said the Last Man Standing guy was doing it. It was going to be a series.
But that's one of
on
those
that.
things that it's like,
Mini-
what do you do?
I don't think
What do
it's
you
supposed
watch
to be-
every Christmas? You watch the Santa Claus and you watch Elf and
Yep.
stuff, but the Santa Claus directly.
And
so
Disney
I'm just
did,
like,
yeah.
are they only doing it because that's what everybody watches,
Of
or are
course.
they? Is it a good
Well,
idea?
And the point, because this is supposed to just be a one-off thing. It's not supposed to be an ongoing series, but the whole point of it is him kind of passing the torch, and I kind of feel like that's Disney having their cake and eating it too. Like, we can get him to pass the torch, be done with Tim Allen, but we could continue on with a new Santa Claus series with the new guy, if that's how it ends. I don't know. I mean, I could, but this is just my mindset thinking, here's a time to pass the torch from Tim Allen to somebody else we want that we can just keep pumping out Santa Claus material and with the new Santa Claus.
One I know that you were actually looking forward to, Sean, was Disenchanted. You actually thought it looked pretty akin to the original.
I do. I don't know.
No,
I don't
I
know
agreed.
why
I saw that
I
trailer
love
and-
that movie. That is one of my favorite Disney movies.
It is good. No, it's a good
I mean, I like Amy Adams. I thought she was perfect for that role. I know we're going to get into the topic of perfection later, but I thought she was perfect for that role. And oh man, what's the guy's name that plays the prince from Sonic? I always forget his name.
I do too.
I know who you're talking about.
The lead actor in Sonic.
I can't think of
He
his
also
name.
played Cyclops.
Cyclops,
Yeah.
Not Wellington. No.
No.
He is.
He's got a good comedic
perfect
talent.
for that. I mean, I'm telling you, he was absolutely perfect for that. I don't care about Patrick Dempsey. I thought he was terrible, but yeah, I'm super excited about that. But again, that movie was made before a lot of the nonsense and the wokeness and stuff. So I'm
On the fence.
I'm kind of like, yeah, what are they going to force into this movie to ruin
When I saw
something good?
And again, the trailer so far doesn't look like there's anything shoehorned in yet. But when I saw the trailer for of Disenchanted, the sequel to Enchanted, I thought, oh, this actually
James
is the
Marsden.
James Marsden. Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the first trailer I've seen from D23 that doesn't look like a straight rehash of what it's trying to be a sequel to.
Yeah.
It actually, and I liked the idea because they hinted at in the trailer, like with her making this wish about the real world being like a fairy tale, and now she's a stepmom, and in fairy tales, stepmothers
Yep,
are
the
evil.
stepmothers,
I
yeah.
loved like the brief scenes they showed of her kind of like going evil and realizing, oh, what's going on as part of this. And I'm like, this is clever. Like if it continued down this trend and if they actually focus on what it means to be a family and her being a stepmother, but again, we don't know with Disney's morals if they'll actually do it justice. But I was like, this could be an actual good sequel. But
So what about Mufasa, the Lion King?
I was like, why are they making
Yeah,
a prequel?
exactly.
And the funny thing is, it's like the untold prequel about how he was actually an orphan. So I was like, so is Scar not his real brother now? Like he was an orphan. Like I don't understand.
Well, they got to give him a story where he was savaged early on, which is why he's evil down the road. Nobody can just be evil for pure evil's sake. Nobody's just born
Well,
bad.
Mufasa's
No.
the orphan, though.
Oh, okay,
victims.
never mind. I'm sorry.
Mufasa
I'm thinking Scar.
No,
Never
it's the
mind.
untold story where Mufasa was an orphan and how he becomes king. So it's like, so he wasn't even born royalty, I guess. I don't know. I feel like they're gonna end up squandering like
It's Black Panther for Lion King.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
think
what
it's gonna be good.
be.
I think what they're gonna do is just like with their other live action stuff, they're gonna take morals and themes and like.
But then
Mufasa should have like. You don't have to have been born regal. Like, look, Mufasa worked his way up from nothing. It's like, don't take away from the lessons Mufasa gave to Simba. Like, we don't need
because
Mufasa's
in the Lion
background.
King, he tells Simba, "My father brought
Yes.
me out here, and his
Well,
father brought him out here."
But just because he's an orphan, that was still his father.
Yeah.
I get it. I think it kind of, and I know people would be like, well, you're wrong, but I think it does kind of muddy some of the themes by doing that. But that's my opinion.
Peter Pan and Wendy was another one that was announced. He's grabbing on everything.
If it's a live action
I don't even know
adaptation,
about that one.
It's not. I don't know if it's an adaptation. It's just called Peter Pan.
it
and
is.
Wendy.
It's a live action of Peter Pan, and the actress came out and said, in this version, Peter Pan and Wendy are equals. And at that point, I was done with it. I'm like, well, I didn't know they weren't equal. Like, well,
Right.
he
Are
does
they
treat
not
her
human?
Well, he treats her poorly, but I mean, they're kids, and he's an arrogant butt munch, and she's supposed to be the mature girl. That's like,
Yeah.
we can't stay kids forever. That's part of the themes of Peter Pan. But in this one, now they're equals. It's like, well, no, part of the point is that he was immature and needed to learn to grow up. But
And I think there's no movie or show or anything that captures that better than Hook.
yeah.
Like that. That's not one of my favorite movies, but that movie right there encompasses the fact that he was a boy and now he's a man. But just
Yeah.
because you're a man and you take on responsibility doesn't mean that you have to lose that childlike heart.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what movie? It's been done perfectly. So why?
Well, in
try
this
again?
one, it's. I mean, they're still kids. It's them actually. It's a retelling of the animated Peter Pan, but I don't know what she meant by it. I mean, she might have just been spouting stuff to be with the in crowd. But the little girl that plays Wendy said, in this version, Peter Pan and Wendy are equals. I'm like, I didn't know that was a problem, but apparently it was.
As always. What about? Let's talk about. Oh crap! This page keeps refreshing.
Yeah,
I'm
mine
sorry.
does too. It's
I'm
terrible.
I'm gonna find a
As
new
soon as
link.
I scroll down to a
Yeah.
section, it just bounces
It's-
back up to the top.
I don't know why it keeps refreshing.
I'm excited
like
about
that.
the animated X-Men show.
Yes, I am.
Well, I was gonna
But
ask
again-
you. You don't know.
You don't know. It's like Marvel there because I fear most for X-Men out of anything Marvel because that is the easiest property to shove,
manipulate,
to
yeah.
shove what because there's so
To
much
mutate.
Yes. Well, because there is a lot of symbolism and allegory in
Oh, yeah.
X-Men, and they are already a very diverse team. Like, every member of the X-Men is from all over parts of the world. And that's fantastic. It's great. But I feel like they're going to try to make an example of it in a way that doesn't need to be. Like, let the team speak for itself. Let the fact that they're hated by people as mutants. And, I mean, the symbolism is perfect because it speaks to everybody on a macro level. When you start shoehorning every little micro detail in there, you lose people. And I hate that because I think X-Men is something that a lot of people love because it is like there is always somebody on the X-Men team that somebody can relate to. And I just I'm afraid they're gonna butcher it. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
and from the history of the X-Men, they encapsulate that hatred or that fear of the mutants with the Holocaust.
Yep.
And it's like, what better part of history to compare that, the mutants and them being different and everything and people wanting to eradicate them to the Holocaust. Like, that is, it's a
'cause
perfect.
Magneto
but
is
now
a
we can't
Holocaust
talk about
survivor.
we can't talk about the Holocaust anymore.
Well, they're talking about
So how are they gonna do
even
that?
changing that, and I think that's they're like, well, he can't be a Holocaust survivor because how would he still be alive? It's like, how's Captain America alive when he was in World War II? It's a comic book movie. You can find a way for Magneto
Yeah.
to have been a Holocaust survivor, especially with the multiverse. Just pull him right on in there. I don't care. I think it's integral that his backstory is being a Holocaust survivor.
Yep.
But they want to kind of change that based on the actors. I know. And I think he would be a good Professor X. I don't want him for Magneto. What's his name?
You talking about the guy from Breaking Bad?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Giancarlo Esposito.
Yes.
Yeah.
Apparently, he has had talks with the MCU, and everybody wants him to either be Magneto or Professor X. And I was like, I'd be fine with Professor X. In fact, it'd be a change of pace because he's always a villain. It'd be cool to see him be a good guy.
He's already in Mandalorian. I don't know. He's,
Yeah.
I just
but
feel
that's
like
not Marvel.
I know, but
He
it's
is everywhere now.
Which Disney owns everything.
He's in The Boys. He's in. He's
Real
in,
quick,
he's in
let's-
everything now.
Willow, I know, is something else you're looking forward to, Sean.
I am looking
I know
forward to
that
Willow.
one.
Yeah, and
we've all
the
seen the
trailer
trailer.
looks good.
It does. again, can they be faithful to the series?
I look forward to Willow greatly, but we'll see. I know they announced stuff for Indiana Jones 5.
That was going to be the last one I brought up.
He said he's not falling down for anyone else to get. He said this is it. He's not falling down for anyone else to get.
Yep. And
I don't blame. He is getting older.
I was going to say,
he's
look,
right. He is right in saying, look,
it's not like we didn't know.
I can't break any more bones doing these movies.
Well, it's either going to be doing movies or flying in planes.
Yeah.
He just continues to
can't
crash
land a
them.
plane.
So, I mean, look, there's so much to see. We've got the link. I'm going to try to find a better one that doesn't keep refreshing because it's annoying as heck.
I'm afraid after Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but hey, we'll see. Maybe James Mangold knocks it out of the park. I mean, it's not from a story from George Lucas, so it's already got a one up there.
But so many things that were announced. Obviously, depending on what side of the fence you're on, I think you look back
on the
10...
extremely skeptical side of the fence.
I was going to say, it does not bode well, I think, for if you look at what Disney started out as, and if you were a fan of classic Disney and brought up through your childhood, and you're close to, being a mature adult and actually knowing what good film and cinema is, you actually would be looking at Disney and thinking, man, it kind of looks a little bleak for the 100th year because we don't know what we're going to get. We're going to get a slew of crap, but we don't know if any of it's going to be any good.
Well, there's even
so much is coming out, but I mean, it's not yet safe to say that the 100th year of Disney is going to be an absolute, it's probably going to be a boom for them at the box office, no doubt. We know they have a ton of content, but I don't know where we're going to go from there.
I was reading an article today that's just part of the rumor mill, but Disney had recently done a 2D animated commercial with the 101 Dalmatian characters for something, and there was some insider who was stating that wasn't just a one-off. Disney's looking at bringing back 2D animated movies, going back to that, to see what. And I mean, I would absolutely love that. I loved it when Disney did the 2D animation and Pixar did the 3D, and you had both.
Yeah.
But again, it's the 2D animated films, as cool as that could be, if they actually put the craft into it and do it justice, would be amazing. But again, if the stories and morals are all garbage, then the 2D animation doesn't matter either.
Yeah, you've got to have the heart.
Yeah.
And
So we'll see if they do end up going back to some 2D stuff to try to entice people. If they can do it right, I would love to see it. But
we'll have to. The time will tell. But also, let's talk about our last headline here for the evening before we move on to our relationship segment. Nope.
Okay. You said last headline. That was the last. I knew we weren't talking about Tim.
No, it's in the headline
I just
section.
Like to catch you.
Toronto International Film Festival. Yeah, it came it's back in person.
Kind of.
And they have 700 films, and I have no idea where to even begin with those. I'm just.
Well, people were giving standing ovations because every time I read a movie at a film festival got a standing ovation, I was like, don't they all now?
Oh, I've seen people, they start trolling, and they will have it'll say, breaking, standing ovation for Halloween, John Carpenter's classic that I just watched in my room for the 100th time.
I know Will got a standing ovation, whatever.
What? Who?
The Whale.
The Whale.
Okay, I thought you said Will. I was like, Will Smith?
The Whale did, and we're about to talk into that. But there was one.
He got a standing ovation.
There was one I was reading online, they said received a 14-minute standing ovation. I'm like, who's gonna stand up and clap that long? What movie's so amazing that you just stand there like a jackass?
That was the that was the
Olivia
Wilde.
No, it wasn't Crimes of the Future. It was a new one.
It was the Don't Worry, Darling.
Don't Worry, Darling.
14 minutes.
I thought one of them got a 14-minute. I think it was for either Harry Styles.
I'm just no movie is that good that you're gonna stand up there like a trained seal clapping.
I know Harry Styles got one for the police. My Policeman or something.
Oh wow!
It's something about he's a gay. He falls in love with a gay cop or something like that.
From the Village People.
No, it takes place before. It's how
it was
YMCA
Blonde received a 14, and maybe at Venice it did.
Because Ana de Armas.
I do want to see Blonde, and I hope it is a good movie. But I can't I don't know what movie Return of the King deserved a 14-minute standing ovation. Okay,
it deserved it. Brendan Fraser. Is back with Oscar buzz. That's the big headline. The fact is
he got a standing ovation too. He did.
He did. And he cried. He teared up. Obviously, it's been a long time coming. Keith, you were even talking about before the show started just how much he's gone through in his own personal life.
Yeah, he had issues on the set doing his own stunts where he messed up his back real bad, and then I was reading where one of the producer or something like tried to make a move on him too, and he had some issues with that. And like his career really took like between not being able to do stuff because of his back, and then kind of being blacklisted because nobody believed him about like the sexual assault. He was gone for a long time, and now like he's kind of making a comeback, and I'm just like, I'm really happy because here's a guy who's been through some crap, kept his head down, is just like, well, I'm gonna live my life and focus on making myself better. He started to lose some weight. He still has issues, I think, because he can't fully move properly because of the back. Like he can move, but not in the way that he needs to be able to exercise.
Yeah, he can't really exercise.
But I mean, I think he does look a lot better.
He's losing his hair. Like
I've always liked Brendan Fraser.
He definitely looks.
He's never like. I mean, he's made bad movies. He's made good movies, but he's always seemed like someone in Hollywood who felt a little bit more genuine than others. I don't know. I mean, you can never tell.
Also, I mean, I hate to say it, he because of hits like The Mummy and that franchise, and it's like, you know, and I mean, even before that, he still had Encino Man.
He was one of those guys that you wanted to be.
Yeah, well, I was going to say
Encino Man and freaking George of the Jungle.
George of the Jungle.
He was ripped in that movie.
Well, he popped up. I've been watching Scrubs, and he's popped up in there.
It was the ex-president of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. So there you go.
Golden Globes, baby.
That assaulted him, and they kind of blacklisted him because they're like, no, they wouldn't do that.
Well,
and again, I'm not, you know.
At the end of the day, I look at it this way. It was one of those things where he just kind of fell off the map, and everybody was like, what happened to Brendan Fraser? He had not only a stellar career, but he was likable. He seemed like, again, he didn't seem like an actor that was just a placeholder or a typecast that you could have put him in a lot of different scenarios, but we only saw him in the action, comedic role in The Mummy before tragedy struck, and it was like, oh crap, shortly after that popularity and that rise, it was like it fizzled out, and it was like, where did he go?
Did like Inkheart and Journey.
George of the Jungle.
George of the Jungle wasn't that bad.
No, well, I like George of the Jungle in hindsight.
One of his first was Airheads. That was a fantastic. Him and Adam Sandler and Steve Buscemi.
Oh, what's
that movie? That's
the one where movie. He's from the past or whatever and wakes up.
Future.
Future.
Blast from the Past.
Blast from the Past.
Yeah.
With Alicia
Silverstone.
Silverstone.
That one was big. I mean, he had bad
that.
ones. Monkey Bone was terrible.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about Monkey Bone. Yeah.
Well, that was terrible. Like everybody. But it's weird how you saw him in a riddle of movies and you thought, oh, man, this dude's going to be big someday. And then it just... funny enough, I was thinking about it because she popped up in Scrubs. Amy Smart.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, and I'd seen her and like...
She disappeared.
But it was like, you see these people from like yesteryear, and it's like, every once in a while, I looked it up, she was doing some kind of indie flick in like last year.
Last movie I saw her in was the one with Ryan Reynolds.
Just Friends.
Just Friends. Yeah.
Just
and that was like in 20. That was like in the 2000s.
That was the early 2000s.
Like, yeah. So but it's just funny. You see these people, and then when they disappear, you either forget about them or you're like, oh, what happened to them? And then like to see him come back and have this standing ovation, but also showcase like it wasn't like he ever wanted to go away. It was like he had things he had to work through, and it is nice to see him come back. The only thing that I thought was interesting about this was, considering even though he's larger, he wears a fat suit in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was funny because
he's not 800 pounds in real life. So.
No, but that's the thing.
But yeah, he's also gay in the movie.
Well, with all of the complaints of people playing or not going after actors.
They should have got a real 600-pound actor.
A real 600-pound gay man.
They got it for Gilbert Grape.
Actually, the funny thing is, when he was first hired, I do remember there were, not widespread, but there were some complaints that Brendan Fraser's lost weight. He shouldn't be playing it. And I'm like, whatever.
And that just, again, it goes
There's
to show
always going
to
be those ridiculous.
Right. And I thought that I rolled my eyes but it's just the world we live in now where I see that. And I'm like, I already see that as going to be a complaint from people. Yeah. And I almost want to jump on the bandwagon just to add to the noise to show how ridiculous it is. But two, the other thing is I'm starting to see this trend, and we joked on it a little bit with the beginning of the show with the Emmys, but I'm starting to see this trend of, it is blatantly obvious now with award shows that when you have a comeback or a major stellar performance that gets awarded or applauded so great, it's like you're getting pulled for, and then you're almost going to win. Yeah. And I could see that being... I'm not saying his performance isn't good. I'm not saying it's not worthy. I haven't seen the film.
I hope it's that good, but I thought the same thing. It's like, are they only praising him because it's a
comeback?
Yeah.
Just like with
Not to
Iron
be-
Man
not to
and
be
Robert
a-
Downey Jr. and
Not to be a bit of an ass, but Chadwick Boseman won an Emmy for his voice acting work in the What If series.
Obama won an Emmy for a documentary on Netflix.
That's what I'm saying.
Because they love the guy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I saw What If. It was fine. I didn't really think it was
Lizzo
that great.
freaking won an Emmy.
But that's my point.
Lizzo's got an Emmy and a Grammy. Come on.
I didn't think any part of What If was Emmy worthy, including his performance. And I'm like, did you give Chadwick Boseman this posthumous award because
one award
Exactly.
you can give him after he's gone?
One more award that it's like, I'm sorry, like he wasn't bad by any means, but it wasn't.
I hate to say
an
it,
Emmy worthy.
It's
voice
often
acting.
the reason why I was upset. Now years later, I wasn't at the time, and I still think it holds its place in time, so it's still okay, it's safe. But I was upset that Heath Ledger won posthumously because I'm like, I can
'Cause
already
everybody's
see
gonna
that's
say
going to
he
say
only won.
because he died, and I
Yeah.
hate that thought because I'm like, no, that was no doubt the best performance that year, and you see other performances that have come after it, and I'm sorry, that was a very for a superhero movie to take on that visceral and cerebral performance was just unheard of and different.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it was one of a kind, and no doubt he deserved
Well,
it.
Maybe they gave. I was just sorry.
No,
I was just gonna say maybe they gave Boseman the Emmy because he didn't win the Oscar. Because if you remember, they held the last spot.
Yeah, I know.
Because they expected him to win. I
and
think
he didn't.
I
Yeah,
cracked
he
that. I think that's
Yep.
hilarious. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not, but it is.
Well, I like to.
Sorry, you go ahead.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Go
I
ahead,
was
Tom.
just gonna. Well, you're talking about the whole comeback thing and the all of the like the hype and maybe winning an award because of it. I've been telling you all about Shia LaBeouf and some of the things. And he's got a movie, Padre Pio, that's coming out that sounds like they're already touting one of his greatest performances. And I have no doubt that it may end up being one of those movies that gets that kind of buzz just based on what I've heard about it. But is it because he's been through,
See, unfortunately,
some
I
hell
think it'll
that
be
he's
the
created,
opposite.
or is it because he's
I think it'll get overlooked or get tampered down because of the
because
content.
of his stigma?
Yep.
Yeah.
But not the stigma, the content. I don't think they have any sympathy for any kind of movie about. I mean, I just,
You don't think Father Stu will get anything?
Oh
no.
Oh heck
Really?
no.
Father Stu's not
Heck
gonna get
no.
any Oscar nods. No.
That won't. This Padre Pio, no matter how good it
I
is,
think,
it'll get overlooked.
especially since Father Stu was so early. They'll pick all the ones that.
Well, that's the problem. There's such a precedent for. Well, we've seen this type of movie before. We need a new precedent.
Silence was nominated.
Yeah, but it was also Scorsese.
Well, yeah.
And I'm sorry, but Scorsese has an in with.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's got
that's
that,
like.
yeah.
I mean, hell, I look.
You're right.
The
I
Irishman is
forgot.
okay.
Yeah,
But it's not amazing.
No,
and it didn't
no.
win. I mean, it didn't win anything. And I'm not
It
saying
deserve to, but
right.
still, the fact that it was hyped up and everything.
It's like it's a 3-hour gangster film. We've seen them before.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but
I don't think Wolf of Wall Street is amazing. I mean, Scorsese has
actually love that
amazing
movie.
works. I love Wolf of Wall Street, but I don't think it was
Leo
worthy of all the
should have
Oscar
won for
noms.
that. Leo should have won for that over Revenant.
I agree
Oh,
with
yeah.
that. I do.
I don't think he
I do
deserved. I
agree
think
with that.
Revenant was given to him because, and it pisses me off because again, the whole while they want to say there is no such thing as meritocracy. It's all fake and it's just white privilege and blah 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 blah. Whatever, insert whatever. I also look back to times where I'm like, Alfred Hitchcock never won an Oscar.
Never.
Is one of the greatest living or non-living, but was one of the greatest living directors of all time, and no doubt changed the art form, and yet never was awarded an Oscar. And it's like that's okay to me because
We've
it's
seen
like
some of the movies that were rewarded instead.
well, and that's
they were not good.
and they weren't right. Well, and even I think we actually dissed him on his early nomination with Rebecca. It wasn't even worth it, but it got nominated for Best Picture, and we were like, it wasn't that great.
No.
But it's just interesting when you look back. Sometimes I understand when certain years are weaker than others, and you have certain nominations that stand above because it was genuinely the best that year, and it was just a bad year. But then there are other years where it's like,
plenty of years where we've looked and been like,
how in the hell did? But then there's also like, how in the hell did this win over this? There's no, and you look back and you see some of the winners, and you're like, nobody remembers that. Nobody remembers those movies, and it's like,
so you don't remember
Moonlight and The Shape of Water.
yeah, exactly, right. Perfect example. Right.
I remember all the
That's
movies
it.
it was up against. I just don't remember that one.
No, that's the sad thing. You only remember them because of how bad they
remember-
were
yeah.
that they won,
Yep.
and they shouldn't have. He's looking them up now.
I want to.
I think we need
because
to,
I can't remember the bad ones. I was trying to think, what's one that's
well, the year
they're not memorable.
The year that Shape of Water won was the year with Fences, wasn't it?
Fences was nominated that year, I believe.
I'm like, how did
Far
that movie
better
win over Fences? Like, God dang.
I forget what else was nominated that year because there was far better movies.
I wasn't
that
even
year.
looking at that year. I was just looking at like Crash. Like
Crash.
Crash
Yeah,
was-
no,
It
that was
won.
terrible. Well, and I think we've talked about it on the show before, but it was like post.
we do this all the
2008,
time. We'll pull them up and be like,
2009.
oh, this year was this
Like
year's
the last
terrible.
decade is when it started, and it's like you can look at the last decade and see. Well, I mean, think of freaking. What was it that won over La La Land that year? Moonlight, yeah. And I'm like, come on.
La La Land won.
And then there was-
we
there-
heard the real and that they changed it. They robbed it.
They had to. All right, I think we got to move on.
Yeah, we need
we got to
to.
get onto our relationship segment. We're running
Go
along.
for it. Go
All
for
right,
it.
let's roll that beautiful open there.
Let me tell you about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees and the moon up above and a thing called love.
All right, we teased it. We're finally doing our relationship segment.
Yes, we are.
We're moving away from movies for a
Moving
little bit.
right along.
Moving from
Keith
movies.
got a hold of the notes again.
Uh-oh.
I don't.
I don't want to know what he wrote.
I don't-
can't say it.
I don't.
can't say it.
I don't
on here.
touch notes.
I can't
I
say
don't
it on
touch
here.
them.
Sure.
Somebody
sure
touched
you
it.
don't. Touch something.
I'm sitting there scrolling through, and I'm like, oh my God.
So the topic at hand, other than what Keith wrote in the notes,
it's not that
is
one.
actually, is there a perfect someone?
They go along together.
They do.
Now I've got to look
No,
at
no,
it. I'm not going to read
Go
it.
ahead. Go ahead. But just go ahead and say the question while you're looking.
Okay,
So there's not
is
just
there a
dead
perfect
silence.
someone for everyone?
Is there a perfect someone? For
That is the
everyone?
question that I
No, there's not. Some people are going to die alone, and they better get used to it. That's my answer.
That's a good one. Well, I just read the note. That is true.
My note or what I just said? Both.
Actually, I didn't hear what you said. I
I
was too
said
busy
no.
reading.
There's not. Some people are going to die alone, and they better get used to it.
Dang. It's
Yeah.
harsh.
It's harsh
Maybe, maybe
life-
the perfect
reality's
person
harsh. Truth's
for
harsh
them
sometimes.
is themselves.
Maybe.
Say that again.
I said maybe the perfect person for them is themselves. Maybe some people are just perfect alone.
They're asexual, non-binary.
I wouldn't go in that route.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
just
not
saying
going to go
they're
down
okay
that
being
rabbit
alone.
hole.
Just saying.
So let's open it up. We talked about it a little bit next
We
door.
did.
I did say
Kristen
that I
was
had
eager to
a-
hear all our responses.
Yeah.
I had a
Let's
definitive
stipulate
answer.
real quick though. Are we talking about romantically or are we talking about just in general?
in general.
Okay.
But I'm obviously we leaned romantically over there, and I kind of have
Right.
an answer for both. I mean, I will say in the non-romantic way, we've talked about that before with like relationship or friendships and how everything
I
has a
totally
season.
believe God puts people in your life for a reason. I don't. Is there a perfect person? Like, yeah, I mean, in that sense, for like if they're, like whatever is going through your life that you need, I do put people.
Ooh.
Like God will put people in
Yeah.
your path for
just
you.
had a thought.
But I
Yeah.
also don't necessarily hold to the idea as far like it's the like this soulmate, this
yeah.
person that's out there, because like I said, I mentioned it over there. That can get dangerous in the fact that sometimes you don't do what you need to do to find and build a healthy relationship because you're just thinking, well, either whether it's destiny or God's just going to plop somebody in my lap. So you sit around like, well, I believe that, God has this plan for me, so it'll happen. I don't have to actively do anything. God will make sure I'm all right. And I don't think that's a healthy mindset either.
Well said. Sean, what about you?
I was just going to say, I had other things to say too, but you talking about the fact that
Bring it in.
God puts people in your life.
I do believe that.
Well, does anything God does, is anything that God does imperfect?
No.
Then everybody that he puts in your life for whatever reason is the perfect reason, because he can't do it. He can't do wrong. He can't fail. So even if he puts someone in your life that torments you, it's perfect because
yes, but I would say though
he can't be imperfect.
To not go down that road that could easily be distorted. There is a healthy part of this world is God has kind of allowed to let certain dominion reign.
But for
It's a
For
it's a
his
world-
purpose.
Well, here's the thing. It's not that his purpose is not, I think, fulfilled by the end of time, but there are still things that I think would happen that he would not institute himself. He'll allow it to happen, but it's still for his glory.
Right.
By the end of it.
Ultimately.
But
yes,
yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. But that type of kind of conditioning, I don't think means, because it's like the devil is just as much at work in this world as God is.
Well, yeah.
And so much it is his domain to where he could
It's
put
still
people in
a world full of sin. So
Right.
yeah.
No,
And
I'm not
fall in
saying
a
it's
broken-
not. I'm just
yeah.
saying, someday when you get there, if you even care enough to ask the question, why did you allow this to happen in my life? Well, when he shows you or tells you, it's
Right.
perfect.
Well, and I
it's going to
think-
be perfect.
I think anybody would be lying if they hadn't said that they haven't experienced a string of events at some point where they didn't quite understand why something so bad was happening at a given time, only to find out later that it either strengthened or encouraged them.
Right.
Or better yet, there was an answer that was revealed later on they never even saw coming. Because God does work in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that bad things don't happen to good people. I mean, take Job as a perfect example biblically. And I know this is kind of getting off the topic.
No.
It is and it isn't.
I was just raising the question. If we're talking about perfection, the only
Right.
one that achieves perfection is God.
Right.
Then anything He does is perfect.
I personally
whether
like-
we see it as perfect or not.
I personally liked your other answer over there, in that we all have a perfect relationship in Jesus. So
That was it.
Well,
There it is.
well, yeah, He is
that resolves
perfection. So
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So
yeah, no,
therefore,
I get it.
Answers
I was leading.
It's solved.
I was
Done.
just, you
I'm
gave
just
me
saying
another
it's-
thought.
It's solved. We've already solved it.
Yeah.
On to the next quandary.
Brandon had something profound that was
I
coming,
know,
so
no,
I'm anxious to hear
let's-
that one now.
Yeah.
I never said it was profound. I just said I had a definitive answer.
Well, you have your definitive answer.
Yeah.
Don't put your truth into our mouths.
Never said that. My gosh, he's projecting over
Just
there,
say
isn't he?
That's
Better not.
your truth.
Yeah.
I never said it was anybody's truth but mine.
Sean
No.
said it was profound, so
Okay,
I was just
so
letting you know right now.
We'll circle around. Let's
Yeah,
go.
No, Kristen, my next door neighbor. She was just talking about it, and she I told her what the segment was going to be about, and she
He
gave her
repeats
opinion.
everything she said as if it was his idea.
That's right, copyright, trademark.
Go ahead.
But no, my thought and the kind of the reason I phrased it that way was sort of a trick question. No, I don't believe there's a perfect someone. I used to say this phrase back when I was in high school that there's a perfect imperfect person for everybody. And even now I felt like I look back now and I'm just like, again, corny, cliche, cheesy, Dawson's
you
Creek.
were a high school dummy.
But the thing is, I do think, as when I was younger, I believed wholeheartedly in this pursuit of someone with, I had a huge checklist. I definitely believe there was a soulmate that was made for me out there. And over time, and I think so much of that perspective got in the way of going on dates, getting to learn more about not only other girls and other personalities that I could have either said, oh, no, we don't really mesh. Kind of, again, testing the waters, which I think is what you do in the dating pool. But I think as I've gotten older and obviously still single, but looking and wanting to have a family, having a wife and kids someday, it has grown upon me that it's like, no, I've said on the show, I think before, talking about this topic of trying to find somebody, that I've whittled it down to like 3 different criteria that I have personally that I'm looking for. And it's very simple. It's, Christian, conservative, wants kids. And well, I guess I'd throw in a 4th thing, which is, I've got to be attracted to him, because I know a lot of people will try to, and I've told people, I don't care, you can get mad at me or not. If you throw out someone as an idea, and I see them and I'm like, I'm not attracted to them. I've just got to there's got to be a genuine connection.
I would say
at
that's
least
the truth
to
for
start
everyone.
out.
Like, I feel like people are a lot like.
Yeah, when they lie and they're just like, oh, beauty's on the inside. I'm
It's like-
okay, that's true, but you're not going to be.
I don't want to know your inside unless your outside looks good.
Well, here's the thing, because what Brandon's attracted
That was a good way to put it.
isn't the same thing that I'm attracted to. So
Right.
yeah, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but for everyone, you're not going to end up with somebody that you have zero attraction to.
Yeah.
There
Right.
has to be some
Right.
type of
Yeah.
attraction there.
Unless you're blind.
So
Love
Maybe.
is blind.
and even then you're
out
attracted
the
to their
cliches.
person. You can't see physically, so at least you're attracted to the personality.
But part of that perspective also brought me to the conclusion of, no, I don't believe there's a perfect person for everyone. I believe that as your relationship develops, as you get married and start the family, that is when the relationship grows and becomes the perfect relationship. The problem with thinking there's a perfect someone is thinking this checklist that you have, whatever it may be, however long it may be, is that somehow everybody's going to check off these specific things and is going to help you say, oh, well, this is the person I'm supposed to be. I think we jokingly talked about it over there about, oh, wow, they're interested in the same things I am.
Yeah.
So that must mean
that.
they're a soulmate. And it's like, no. If they have the same values and principles I do, those things are going to be paramount over interests. We can always, in fact, I would almost kind of dislike if we had the exact same interests, because then there's kind of no, there's no kind of variety.
Yeah.
It's just milquetoast. And it's like,
if you liked all of the
everything
same
the same. Of course, I think
sometimes you kind of want something that's just yours too. It's kind of
Right.
like, you don't want them to be up your butt every waking moment.
Right. And I think too much in today's society, we're not only focused, I think, that on this idea of a soulmate or a perfect person from the outset. I think we are even after the deed is done. And I think, again, this is where it's lost in our culture of what marriage and what vows are. And I think too many people don't take that to heart in the same way that it used to be in traditional times, in days of old, in my parents' generation. I think far too many people give up too easily because they are so focused selfishly inwardly on what they want out of a relationship than what the other person is or what they even got in the relationship for. And it's like, no, you're not trying to pick somebody who's your maid. You're trying to pick somebody who is your partner, who's your, not a competitor, but somebody who's going to be there with you through thick and thin and through no matter what ends up happening in life, you can't always turn to and rely on. And I think so many people give up on that and they throw in that towel and they don't fight for the vows that they have instituted. And I think that when you do give that up, you're ultimately saying that you're not willing to go through life with that person. You're not willing to reach that precipice of what perfection is even coming close to, even though you'll never attain it. And I think, Sean, you brought up something that was perfectly said about a book that you had read to your youth before. I forget what it was. It was a very good.
The New Rules for Love, Sex, and Dating, I think, is the order that it goes in. But it's Andy Stanley wrote the book. I don't really listen to him much anymore because he doesn't believe in the Old Testament anymore. But he wrote. It's a good book, and it says for people who are dating, basically, we look around for Mrs. Right and Mr. Right, but you're not going to find that person until you're Mr. Right or Mrs. Right. And it says that what you should be striving for, instead of looking for the things, like you said, to check off your list, you should be focused on becoming the person that you're looking for is looking for. So if you're looking for a Christian conservative woman that wants kids, not that you need to be a woman, you need to be,
I could try.
You need to work towards becoming a good Christian man, conservative that wants kids.
Absolutely.
And it's like you're not going to find, when you focus on you and you becoming the person that God wants you to be, He'll deliver in one way or another the person that He has set aside for you.
Absolutely.
But I also would say in terms of soulmates and things like that, God has an infinite plan, and His plan is full of smaller plans. He doesn't make mistakes, so He doesn't have contingency plans, because plan A always works. There is no plan B. But I do believe that God has multiple plans for your life and even people for your life. And I said over there, if something happened to my wife, who I think is the perfect person for me, if something happened to her, I would say right now, I don't really see myself getting remarried. But I wouldn't say that that's an impossible thing that would take place. Maybe I would, because if God has the perfect person for who I'm going to be with after my wife, then I'm going to go with that. I'm going to follow that plan.
Right.
And it may not seem feasible to me right now, but later on at the time, just as my plan for, or my not my plan, but just as my checklist changed over time.
Same, yeah.
I think that would be something that would change. I could be so lonely, and I want my children to have a female role model in their lives, and I may look for another woman, but God's already got her set aside for me, and she's perfect for me at that time. Just as right now in my life, Amelia is the perfect woman for me right now. And I'm not at all saying that I'm looking for any others or nothing like that, but I'm saying, who's to say that there's not multiple perfect people for you at that place in that time in your life?
And I think that's why I phrased it that way, was I think to get people tripped up on the word perfect.
Right.
Because I think too often we have this goal.
Your perception or your idea of perfect is,
right. But then
skewed.
there is this exactly, because you yourself aren't perfect.
We don't know what perfect is.
But I also believe that it's like the old saying, practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny that it's like when you go into a relationship, it's like you're not gonna, if you really focused on trying to be the absolute perfect romantic, Christ-loving couple, it's not going to be the case, because you're both imperfect people.
Yeah.
And yet together, there is this, this union that has been created amongst you two to go forth and make that practice, practice and make it perfection. And even knowing that you'll never fully attain those ideals.
Right.
But also constantly putting yourself in check that is what you're striving for. And I think that makes all the difference, and ultimately that makes the person you are spending your life with and building a life with, that is what makes you that's what makes your soulmate.
Absolutely.
It's not about, I'm going to set out this plan and it's got to follow to a T. It's like, no. Part of the relationship is the building of that life together and going forth. And so for me, that's kind of where I see it as, it's not that there's a perfect someone that is matched for me. Maybe there is written in the book of life that God has planned out. And even though I don't know who it is, but I know that the person that I can make that commitment to, that I am making the faithful commitment that I'm setting out on a journey of, no matter where it takes me, whatever uncharted waters there are, I'm going there with this person, and me and this person hand in hand have made this commitment together, and we are going into those uncharted waters together.
Yeah.
And we will make that life that will, hopefully lead to God's glory and that he will bless. And there will be trials and tribulations, but it is that which will hopefully make our relationship and our union stronger and better, and ultimately, again, for the sake of looking to God's glory and how he's blessed us to begin with.
Yeah. That's well said. No.
So,
just a quick example of how my idea of perfection is skewed, and I don't know why it just popped in my head, but to me, the perfect woman for me to be with would be a woman that would say, "Oh yeah, let's go buy a Corvette." I know you really want one. You've always wanted one. Let's just go do it. Let's spend $80,000 on a car.
Right.
It's like that. But the fact that the woman that God has put me with is the balance in my life that I need. I need checks and balances, and she's those for me, because if not, my idea of perfect would be, let's just go out and do fun. Let's just go out and do this. But it's like, but
it's like,
again,
sorry, Andrew, you don't get dinner tonight.
Yeah,
Daddy
sorry.
just bought a car.
Yeah,
it's beautiful, guys. You want to come take a ride in it?
Yeah, Sawyer would be like, it's got 2 seats, one for me and one for you. So it's
Mom's not even coming.
It's God's idea of somewhat or semi perfection is to have me with someone that balances me out. Someone that is not interested in everything that I'm interested in.
Right.
Someone that has likes and dislikes of their own that I don't always agree with, because it tests me. It builds my patience. It builds my endurance. There's all of these different things that go in there. And I feel like sometimes even our idea of, so you may end up with somebody that isn't the person that you would say is the perfect person for me. But God sees them as the perfect person for you, or who he's got plan for you, which
I think, again, kind of going back to, and I think everybody kind of reaches it at whatever walk they're in, but I think too a central focus of what our conversation has relied on this evening and is, again, Christ-centered.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately when you truly do allow God to be the compass that is driving the motivations of what you're after, when you allow him to be the the pinpoint of, okay, this is the destination I want to achieve. When I'm chasing after him, then no doubt I believe that I'm chasing after, I am uniquely made in the image of God, and each individual is. And no doubt those unique characteristics cater to something that God has instilled in me that no other human being has. The same as the woman who I will end up with one day and marry. And ultimately, for me, it's a matter of knowing that it'll be that Christ-centered relationship that is our ultimate goal of when we get off track, when we do let our imperfections get in the way, when we are selfish, when we are only looking at things from our point of view, we go back to that center pillar and say, this is what holds us together, and this is what we have to look to ultimately keep this union perfect and ultimately striving for that same exact perfection that God sending his own son for us to save us by grace, to bring the church and his, again, he is the bridegroom, for his church.
Yep.
And it's like for us to represent that within our union and our marriage is the ultimate goal of what we're trying to reach. And so when I start to focus on that as the sole purpose and the values that come from that in my life, my own personal life, I believe that God is beginning to shape and mold me into, okay, this is the person, this is the man I've made you to go out to start taking on those uncharted waters with this other woman, to make a family and to instill that in them and to continue on and to build further strong relationships for my kingdom. And I look at it in that light more so now than I think where it was kind of filled with a lot of frivolous thoughts and also just, again, it's part of maturing and becoming an adult, and also, again, becoming and understanding who God has made you and trusting and hoping and praying in him, and that he will, set you forward. Because I think we also, last point, I think we also talked about there are people who don't find love in life, or their love is found in God, and that is sufficient enough. And I think there are people, I don't mean to try to talk down to single people or people who are, abstinent and who don't look to marry or ever enter into any kind of relationship. That doesn't mean you don't have a relationship that's there. That relationship is in God. It is in Christ, and that's where you can find your value, and you no doubt can find eternal life. And I think that is the fountain you have to drink from almost certainly before you ever think about charting courses with committing to a relationship and in marriage. And if you don't, I think, again, there's a lot of marriages out there that are successful without, I think, Christ-centered homes, but it's like, to what degree are they really successful? I think that's the real question you have to put into perspective.
Yeah.
And that's the only, I'll phrase it that way, I guess. As a believer, that's the only way I'll phrase it. That's a discussion for another time.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. I think that's going to do it. Keith, I don't know, did you want to add anything else to that discussion?
No, it's past 10:30.
Okay.
But you can still have an opinion past 10:30. You can.
That's it. That's his opinion,
I talked earlier.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay.
I did.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you all so much for joining us on the Red Moon Podcast. Hope you enjoyed that discussion. If you did and you want to tell us what your thoughts are on relationships and if there's a perfect person, have you met that perfect person? Have you met Jesus? Lord!
Do you have a Corvette?
That's
good timing. The little coin. Yeah, I like that.
By all means, you can email us with any of those questions, comments, concerns, criticisms.
Yep.
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com. Right there at the bottom of your screen.
That was great.
I don't know. That just came out of nowhere, man.
Wow. He's got all the sound bites on point.
The sound bites are coming out of his mouth now.
I would say you just make them up.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Right there at the bottom of your screen, Keith.
Right here? The RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
I always have to let him say it.
I know. I'd rather you let him say it.
I like it.
Unlike Tom Hanks, he doesn't change his accent and his voice in the middle of a movie.
That line, I don't know why. That one specifically just...
No, I thought the line was funny. I thought the way he delivered it was terrible.
That's what I'm saying. The line was fine, but his delivery was terrible, and he completely lost the accent.
It took Pinocchio a long time to get to that boat. I'm just saying.
Yes.
I thought, where
was
was
really
he going?
stupid.
He said he took that boat to get to Pleasure Island. It took him Pinocchio got to and back from Pleasure Island pretty quickly. Geppetto's a whole half a day later still paddling out
he
in
was
the
just
ocean.
The wind was dead.
I
he
don't
didn't
know.
have any wind.
He didn't have a
sail.
bird.
I just kept
He
thinking
should've got a seagull.
I just kept thinking of Castaway. Wilson! Wilson! That's what he sounded like to me. You did all that in a day?
Yeah, I
Wilson!
have made fire. Yeah.
All right,
Okay, he didn't
guys.
sound Italian anymore.
We're gonna go rail on
gotta go bash
Pinocchio
the
right
movie
after the
again.
show some more. Join, like, share, and subscribe.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Red Moon tweet, Red Moon Pics, and search for Red Moon Productions on YouTube. Thank you all so much. Live every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
and that's it.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.